Shalom and good evening. This is TV7 Israel News broadcast to you from Jerusalem. And in today's top stories, Jerusalem regards Russia as Israel's northern neighbor in light of Moscow's undeniable influence over Damascus. Unidentified aircraft strike Syrian installations along the border with Israel in an attack attributed to the Israeli Air Force. Turkey is deploying significant numbers of forces in northern Syria ahead of an anticipated military offensive. Israel regards Russia as its northern neighbor in light of Moscow's undisputed influence over Damascus. Israeli Prime Minister Naftali Bennett returned to Israel on Saturday night after spending the Shabbat day in the Black Sea resort of Sochi, highlighted the importance of extensive discussions held with Russian President Vladimir Putin for roughly 5 hours, which focused primarily on Syria and Iran.
הנשיא פוטין ואני שוחחנו על המצב בסוריה כמובן, הרי במובן מסוים הרוסים הם שכנים שלנו מצפון, וחשוב שננהל את המצב העדין והמורכב שם באופן חלק בלי תקלות. הגענו לסיכומים טובים ויציבים, ומצאתי אצל הנשיא פוטין אוזן קשבת לצרכי הביטחון של ישראל. שוחחנו גם על תוכנית הגרעין האיראנית שמצבה המתקדם מעורר דאגה אצל כולם.
The Israeli leader went on to emphasize that while relations between Moscow and Jerusalem are defined as very good, there remains room for improvement, with significant opportunities existing primarily due to large number of Russian-speaking Israeli citizens.
היחסים בין שתי המדינות טובים מאוד, אבל תמיד אפשר יותר. ובמקרה הזה הפוטנציאל של שיתוף הפעולה הכלכלי, המדעי, התרבותי, הטכנולוגי, הוא אינסופי, בהתחשב בעובדה שיש בישראל כמיליון דוברי רוסית.
It is worth mentioning that President Putin called Premier Bennett on Saturday night to thank him for their fruitful bilateral meeting and invited the Israeli Prime Minister to visit him in St. Petersburg in the near future, to which Bennett responded positively, and during his cabinet meeting remarks, which were made on Sunday, the Prime Minister amplified Israel's growing international standing.
יחסי החוץ של מדינת ישראל בתנופה. הממשלה הזאת פותחת למדינת ישראל הרבה דלתות חדשות בעולם, ואנחנו כמובן מחזקים את היחסים הקיימים והטובים עם רבות מהמדינות. וזה תמיד משמח לראות כמה מוערכת המדינה שלנו וכמה יש לנו לתרום לעולם.
While Israel is proactive in efforts to so-called widen its circle of peace, its northern neighbor, Syria, is evidently not interested to become one of those nations. Its position was relayed yesterday to the Hezbollah affiliate Al-Mayadeen news site, to which a senior Syrian official asserted that Damascus will not normalize its relations with Israel. The unnamed Syrian official asserted that any Arab openness to Syria will not modify its position on Israel, regardless of the intentions of the Arab countries. It is important to explain that the refer to Arab openness towards Syria is made in reference to a seeming warming of ties between Syria and its southern neighbor Jordan, which retains a peace treaty with Israel. It is also important to mention that infiltration of Iranian elements into Syria's military are a point of increased contention between Jerusalem and Damascus, as well as Moscow and Tehran, respectively. In an apparent warning to Syrian troops from collaborating with Iranian elements against Israel, including Tehran's Lebanese proxy Hezbollah, the IDF dropped leaflets along Israel's border with Syria yesterday, threatening that any such collaboration will bring upon the Syrian armed forces both strife and disaster. Prior to the reported warning, the London-based Syrian Observatory for Human Rights reported that Israel conducted aerial strikes against missile batteries belonging to Syrian regime forces and their allies on the outskirts of Al-Bath city and Al-Qum village, which are situated in the Quneitra governorate. The monitoring group, which is affiliated with the Syrian opposition, further claimed that while it has no immediate information regarding casualties, the alleged Israeli strike caused material losses. Other local opposition sources claim that the target of the Israeli strike included Syrian army officer Bashar al-Hussein, who commands the 90th Brigade, which is tasked with manning observation posts along the Israeli-Syrian front. Meanwhile, the Syrian Foreign Ministry condemned Israel for the reported strike, claiming it to be an aggression against the sanctity and sovereignty of the territory of the Syrian Arab Republic. Nevertheless, in response to TV7's request for comment, the IDF spokesperson's unit did not confirm nor deny its alleged responsibility. Meanwhile, in the Swiss city of Geneva, a United Nations brokered session of Syria's Constitutional Committee concluded over the weekend in evident dismay. After a week of deliberations, which included 45 representatives of Syria's government, separate opposition groups, and civil society, deep divides and mistrust alongside realities on the ground continue to obstruct any tangible progress.
I think it's fair to say that the discussion today was a big disappointment. We did not manage to achieve what we had hoped to achieve, that we would have a good discussion on how to reach forward for some kind of a consensus. I think we lacked a proper understanding on how to move that process forward.
According to a government representative in the talks, opposition groups proposed texts for aspired reform, which went as far as legitimizing Israel, as well as U.S. and Turkish presence on Syrian soil, which Damascus regards as delusional.
استمعنا إلى كل الطروحات التي قدمها بعض المشاركين والتي كانت للأسف بعضها منفصل عن الواقع تماما، بل أنها كانت تعكس في بعض جوانبها أفكارا خبيثة وأجندات معادية، إلى أن وصل الأمر بالبعض إلى تشريع كيان الاحتلال الصهيوني وتبرير ودعم الإجراءات القسرية أو حادية الجانب الغير مشروعة والغير قانونية، والتي كانت سببا مباشرا في إفقار الشعب السوري وتعميق معاناته، إضافة إلى أن كانت آراء البعض تتجه إلى تشريع الاحتلالين التركي والأمريكي للأراضي السورية.
Turning to Syria's northwestern border region with Turkey, where the Turkish military is in the process of deploying significant reinforcements to the area, including dozens of tanks, artillery, and other necessary equipment necessary for a wide-scale operation. In tandem, Turkish-backed militias have reportedly summoned all of their militants, whom are to be deployed in the Syrian border town of Tel Abyad ahead of a looming military offensive. It is important to explain that Ankara's decision to launch a wide-scale operation against Syria was made after a deadly cross-border strike killed 2 Turkish officers. Despite no organization claiming responsibility for this attack, Turkey blamed the US-backed YPG militia and vowed retribution, claiming further that neither the United States nor Russia fulfilled their promises to thwart terror-related activities against Turkey.
Şimdi bunlar sözlerinde durmadığına göre, bu teröristler burada olduğuna göre ve saldırılarını arttırdığına göre bizim de yapmamız gereken şey nedir? Kendi göbeğimizi kendimiz kesmek. Sayın Cumhurbaşkanımızın da söylediği bu. Yani biz de gerekeni yapacağız. Bu bölgelerden bu teröristlerin temizlenmesi için ne gerekiyorsa yapacağız.
Meanwhile, Turkish Defense Minister Hulusi Akar, who attended a NATO summit over the weekend, asserted that Turkey's military presence in Syria's Idlib governorate is a source of regional stability, insisting further that the Turkish presence effectively thwarts the Damascus regime and its Iranian proxy backers from perpetrating massacres against local populations.
İdlib'deki bizim mevcudiyetimiz önemli. Çünkü bu bizim oradaki varlığımız rejimin ilerlemesi, rejimin katliamlarını engelliyor. Bunun engellenmesi ise göçü durduruyor, göç dalgasını engelliyor ve radikalleşmeyi durduruyor.
Defense Minister Akar also referred to a meeting he held with his Greek counterpart Nikolaos Panagiotopoulos on the sidelines of the NATO summit as positive amid increased tensions in the eastern Mediterranean. Ankara's top defense officials said that while Turkey seeks to live in safety, peace, and prosperity with its neighbors, there are some countries who are provoking the situation, in clear reference to France, which signed an elaborate defense pact with Greece, which includes significant armament sales as well as a pledge by Paris to come to the aid of Athens in the event of an attack.
Bazı ülkelerin de kışkırtmasıyla, teşvikiyle bu silahlanma başta olmak üzere bazı eylemler, bazı söylemler ortaya çıkıyor ki bunların da gerçekten orta ve uzun vadede hiçbir yararının olmadığının görülmesini, bilinmesini istiyoruz. Neden? Çünkü biz iyi komşuluk ilişkiler içinde Yunanistan'la beraber olmayı, beraber yaşamayı ve biraz önce söylediğim gibi zenginliklerden beraber faydalanmayı ve ülkelerimizin de güven ve huzur içinde, güven ve refah içinde yaşamasını temenni ediyoruz. Bunu söylüyoruz.
Minister Akka went on to rebuke the Greek-French alliance as undermining trust within NATO and warned that the new security alliance would only cause additional problems for the Greek people. Thank you for watching us. As part of TV7 Israel's prayer initiative, I would like to encourage you today to join the team and me here in Jerusalem to lift up Syria in prayer for its people's salvation and peace, alongside prayers for our persecuted brothers and sisters worldwide, in addition to our ongoing prayers, of course, for the peace of Jerusalem and the salvation of Israel. I'm Jonathan Hassan, wishing you a Shavuot Tov U'Mevorach, and we will see you again tomorrow at the same time.